This conference will now be recorded.
Well, this is Catherine Proto from Sterling House. I'm sorry I missed the opening, but from my opinion, I feel like the collaboration within the town, the private entities, the patrons has been top notch. Um, the town is always receptive to anything that needs to be updated or changed or worked on. And, you know, working at Sterling House, we use the town properties a lot. And it's been a blessing to work with Amy and Chad and Renee. So I just want to put that out there first and foremost. Of course, are there things that, you know, we can improve upon or build upon? But I just want to say the collaboration with the town and all of its public entities, it has been outstanding.
Great.
And this is Bill. I'd agree with Catherine. In my years at Sterling House, also, we had to work very closely with the Board of Ed for the use of school gyms because we depend on that for basketball programs and other programs. And Chad and the Parks Department, especially in recent times, has been very, very responsive when issues are brought to their attention.
This is Tim Sepatelli. Yeah, I said I'm a lifelong resident, but I spent a few years living in Hamden, and I found if I had to go to a playground, it would be a 10-minute drive to find a good playground. And here in Stratford, you can walk or drive to a playground within, you know, a handful of playgrounds within where I am at Paradise Green. It's I think 8 or so playgrounds within a mile of me. And you find that anywhere you go in town, that there's playgrounds everywhere.
Wonderful. Anybody else? Any thoughts about strengths or, you know, progress, things that have been accomplished in the past 10 years?
Well, this is Bill again. They've been doing a good job at fixing up the various playgrounds in town as repairs are needed. Many of them were, you know, quite old, and little by little they're getting them all brought up to good standards.
Great. How about issues? Any issues that need to be addressed, or any needs that your commission has that the town could or should respond to?
This is Catherine again. I don't think issues foremost, but I'll just say as my kids get older, their use of the playgrounds have diminished. So they're 10 years old now, and you know, they'll still run around. But there's nothing for that in-between age, like, and not to say adventure ropes course, but there's that in-between equipment that might be available. I mean, I know the town had a skate park years and years ago. You know, something for that middle age we're kind of missing. We miss it with programming at Sterling House as well, which we're trying to build upon. But there's no real outdoor activity. The town has done a great job rehabbing a lot of the basketball courts, which has been great. I'd love to see the teens outside, which has been awesome. So, you know, which just kind of missing that teen age bracket and something for them to do on an outdoor structure.
And I will mention too, we did go to the high school and talk to some high school students, and we did hear, you know, a movie theater or some kind of sporting facility for teens was something that they would like to see. So I think you're accurate in what you said as well.
Right. I've got a 17-year-old, and all he does is drive around, and they park and they stay there for about 5 or 10 minutes before they're chased away by the cops. So something, you know, when I grew up, I know it's different. I grew up in Norwalk, and Calf Pasture Beach was open until midnight. Cops cruise through once every half an hour to make sure the kids are behaving. But that's where we hung out in high school.
Great.
Sorry, there's on the call, caller 3. Can you please identify your name? Who's caller 3?
I'm not sure if it's someone that just called in. This is Bob Jekyll. I'm a committee member, Jaekle.
Okay.
I apologize for my delay.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Great. So any other issues or needs before we move on to the next question? Anybody?
Well, I know at the last Parks and Rec Committee meeting was mentioned that as we talk about a possible new facility, about having better maintenance of what we now have. And I know that's an issue of manpower and budgeting. So, but that is an issue. So we need more money and more manpower.
So related to issues, needs, or, you know, anything that the town could do in the near term to support you or your mission?
I'll speak to what Bill's replying to. Sterling House uses Worcester Field for soccer. We have about 550 kids in the fall and then the same in the spring. We use the entire grass property for about 2 or 3 months at a clip. And the weeds are green, but there's not much the town can do because it's on a school property based on, you know, fertilizing or using chemicals on it. So we're just trying to mitigate ways in which we maybe move off the property for a little while so they can address, you know, revitalizing either the soil or the grass or, you know, however they can, you know, work to better, you know, that field property. So that's one of the issues that we have been trying to speak about. But again, it comes to timing and scheduling and funds and who's going to pay for it. And that's one of the concerns that I have brought just because I utilize that field often, probably 6 to 8 months out of the entire year. So that's one specific example.
I also want to add that when we spoke to residents in the pop-up events and with high schoolers, one common need that everyone has expressed was the need for pickleball courts. And many people said that there were pickleball courts now at Short Beach, but due to the wind, you know, that location is not feasible for them. And that's something I just wanted to bring to your attention.
So Smita, this is Amy from Recreation. The town has invested in lots of pickleball courts. They just put new ones up at Worcester. So there's 4 up at Worcester, brand new, just built, exclusive for pickleball. Flood tennis courts have pickleball courts in there. There's 4 of them up at Flood. We also have some at Short Beach. There was a plan in place to redo Longbrook Park and put them there, but there was some protests from residents who didn't want trees taken down, so therefore that plan was scrapped. So, and I also run an indoor pickleball here at Birdseye 3 days a week, where we have 3 courts up 3 days a week from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for town residents to sign up. So I understand pickleball is the new thing, but I feel that as a town, we have a lot of pickleball courts here in our town, and I think people keep asking for them, but I don't think people are using them as they say they are, because we do online reservations and I can go in and look and we're not booked.
Also, we have 4 tennis courts at Bunnell that are lined for pickleball. And the project at Pendersfield has been revised and hopefully will still happen, but unfortunately the cost has gone up, so it has to be delayed for probably until next year. And also, somebody from Westport recently commented, and think about Westport with all the money they have, they're very jealous of Stratford and the number of pickleball courts we have compared to them.
The same goes for Fairfield. There's a lot of envy of our courts.
Hey, Sue Smith, this is Chad Esposito, the park superintendent. Yeah, we went from, because of the outcry about a year ago, we went from Amy's 2 indoor pickleball courts to 16 outdoor available pickleball courts. So where you're getting that information, or maybe people don't know how many are out there, like Amy said, and they're not booking properly, but we've definitely addressed that.
I suggest if you have a list of recreation facilities and, it'll be helpful to prepare a map and include in the POCD just to show the locations of these. They can help enhance quality of life choices too. Like if somebody wants to pick housing in a neighborhood, they would look at what other amenities are nearby, and this is something that might be a positive or a wow factor for somebody to move somewhere. So if you have any list of, the critical recreational facilities in the town, please give it to Rory so we can have a map of our parks and recreation facilities.
Yeah, thank you, Susmitha. So that
Susmitha,
goes on.
I'll send you a list of what I have from my site. I'll send you how we handle login and all that, and you can forward that on to her.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Also,
So this-
before we get away from the needs, Chad, I have a question for Chad. Chad, were you able to hire any summer help this year, like in the past?
Not this year. When
Yeah.
we kind of went to the second shift, that kind of alleviated the part-time summer help, but it's something that we're looking to bring back.
Okay. So this next one, what plans does your board or commission have, over the next several years that could impact the town?
Well, the
No
most
good.
exciting thing we just talked about recently is the Morgan Francis property that the EPA is going to clean up. And the mayor would like to see that turned into a recreation facility with a couple ball fields and a new playground, which answers one of the needs that was expressed earlier. Actually, a couple of the needs, the playground and more open space.
Great. And can I ask you, Bill, where, I think it was Bill that mentioned
Yeah.
that, where that property is located?
Yeah, right in the center of town, pretty much off Ferry Boulevard, in between Ferry Boulevard and Stratford Center.
Great.
And Chad, do you remember what was it? Over 3 acres, maybe?
It's 5.5 acres, but the usable part is probably in that 3 to 4.
Okay.
So
Which property are we
one,
talking about, Bill?
The Morgan Francis property, as you turn off Ferry
East
Boulevard on
Broadway.
Broadway.
Okay.
Just to reiterate and stuff like that, what Catherine was talking about, Worcester Fields, Stratford is very landlocked, so having this Morgan Francis property kind of open up is kind of putting us in line on what other towns are doing by starting to build, grass or plastic, turf spaces, synthetic turf in these areas so that you're getting away from school-driven properties, which obviously there's many restrictions about how you could grow grass and how you could keep grass on those areas, and starting to move into open space park areas and starting to use them effectively and efficiently on what they could do and how they could be presented. So I'm excited about that, as looking forward, looking at any available property that we could do. I think Newtown now has 6 turf fields. So when you start to bring that into play, it really changes the dynamic of how sports are carried out through a season compared to just regular natural grass and restricted properties.
Sure. Now, can I ask, is there plans for like lighting at that facility? I know that can be kind of a big deal.
I mean, we're in the infancy of that piece of property, so I'm sure it'll be discussed as the remediation and everything kind of goes through. It'll be brought to the public about how it's going to be paid, what a budget is, what could be put there, all of that stuff. So it's still infantile.
And Chad, if we had the money, would turf be preferred?
Yeah, I mean, they just kind of did that preliminary plan with a little league field and a small U10 soccer field. So, I mean, me personally, I wouldn't do. I mean, I have 23 little league fields. I have many multiple U10 fields. If you look at different properties in Worcester, what I would love to see a turf field there, a full size turf field to utilize the property and get a multi-use facility that would really be, available for everybody rather than just the high schools, because the high schools preliminary get, most of the permits, and then they're just sporadically used with youth organizations and in-town organizations from that point. So to have our own field or a recreational based field would really change, a dynamic of this town. But, again, that's years out. So, if there's other properties that come out or other properties that we have that can be transitioned to better suit, the recreational needs or the sporting needs, is something that we should be looking towards long term as well.
Great, thank you. Anybody else? Any other plans? I know we have some different groups here represented. Any other?
This is Chad again. I know we talked about, like Amy and I have talked about different type of, this brings to Catherine and kind of the middle-aged kids as they kind of transition. There's this there's these playground equipment called Yelp. It's basically play backwards. That's a Norwegian company or a European company that's starting to utilize interactive electronic playgrounds. And that's something that we're kind of looking at different properties as well, rather than doing a traditional playground structure, trying to use these Yelp structures that are interactive with kids. And they could be little kids, they could be older kids, they could be teens. It's kind of exciting in the playground world as a new kind of technology.
Great, I'll have to Google that and see what those are. That sounds interesting. Great. Anybody else? Any plans before we move on to the next?
Not to get off topic, but Chad, what are they doing at Worcester Park today? At the playground?
We're setting up for the spring rockers.
Oh, cool. Okay. Thanks.
Oh, and that brings to mind too another question for Chad. Down at Short Beach, where those courts were eliminated, it's just empty space now. Are there any plans for that space?
Basically, right now it's used for off parking. Because of the texture of the ground, you really can't put anything but a post-tension concrete structure. So if down the road it seems like we need more pickleball courts or basketball courts or anything, then you could extend the footprint of the post concrete pad to accumulate what you need. Anything else like a structure or anything would have to go down so deep to make it to firm ground that it really just is going to be open space unless we decide to do some more structure type improvements.
Well,
Chad, do
speaking
you
of
guys?
Short Beach, I'm as a frequent golfer at the par 3, I know how much wind is down there compared to the rest of town, and I can see where that's a problem with pickleball and tennis. Would those wind screens on the fences help at all?
I'm sure it would help, but it would still go up and over the screen. It's never going to be perfect compared to having tree coverage and stuff like that, you know?
I was looking at a forecast for long-term flooding concerns for the region a few days ago. It didn't look like any of our parks are impacted by that, but I didn't get a really close look. Is that something that we're looking at? Is that any concern for any of our recreation spaces?
I don't. That's a good question. That's a great question. I've never really looked into it because I would think if we were going to establish new stuff, maybe it's kind of looked at floodplains. But if it's existing, maybe it's already been looked at.
It looked like Short Beach was in the clear compared to other parts of Lordship, but it's certainly something that
And there's a lot of work being done, especially by the town engineer, looking at flooding issues, and we're getting some big grant money to help with issues in certain parts of town. And that's a good question, Tim. We haven't talked about that piece at all.
Do you have a master plan for parks and recreation facilities in the town?
We had a 5-year master plan that's now past 5 years, and we haven't talked about doing a new one, but it'd be worth looking at the previous one. And then I couldn't help but just think about back when I was playing softball in the mid 70s, how much more recreation department offers now compared to back then. It was so limited back then, especially for youth.
Can somebody share the plan with us?
I know I should have a copy. Amy, do you have a copy of it?
I'll look around in here. I'm sure Aileen knows where that is.
Yeah, I bet she's got a copy.
I'll ask.
Thanks.
Great, that would be helpful.
In general, like in terms of the long-term vision, have you had any discussions or thought on how you can tie in waterfront recreation to more residential upland? Like any ideas for the future, such as boardwalks or anything that you are planning on doing?
I would say other than the 5-year master plan, like I said, it goes back a ways. We haven't really talked much about the future in those areas. Now, talking about tourism that was brought up earlier, we are becoming a tourist attraction just because of our 9 museums and possibly a 10th one by next year if the Breakettes add their planned museum / Hall of Fame. So that's going to really get promoted. And all museums met last week with a plan to work together to promote the museums as a tourist attraction.
And Rory, do you have a list of all these museums?
I think I do.
Oh, does Rory?
But is this Bill? If
Yeah.
you have a list that you could share, and that I can just make sure that I have all of them.
What's your email?
You can email it to Susmitha, but my email is rory.jacobson at fhistudio.com. Great. So yeah, this next question we've sort of touched on a little bit, but what's your vision for your board or commission or the services that you provide? In what ways could or should it change? Thinking about in the next 10 years. Any thoughts?
I think there's a need to diversify the board so that we are gaining more insight from diverse populations around town. Diverse neighborhoods as well.
Yeah, I'd like to have maybe one high school student from each school on the board, on the committee.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Do you have any needs for the facilities right now? Like, you think there is more physical space needed for a particular kind of activity that you don't have right now? That's something that a POCD would address in terms of identifying parcels for future land use.
Now, the greatest need I keep hearing about is the need of gym space for basketball. And I hear that's not just here. I guess, Tim, it's even the case in your facility.
Yeah, there's demand for gym space. There's demand for turf field space anywhere you go.
I would agree with Bill and Tim, but I'm going to throw out their affordable gym space. What happens in the town of Stratford is, most of our gym space is inside school buildings, and we have to pay for the custodians to be on staff in those buildings, and that can be very cost prohibitive for a lot of our programs that we're trying to run that just don't have the money to do that. I mean, sometimes you're looking at, if you have a certain custodian who's been with the town for many years, you're looking at almost $100 to $150 a night for the gym. And it's really cost prohibitive. We try to do our best to find space, where there's already a custodian in place, but it's expensive.
Especially at weekends and holiday weekends, I think they end up with at least double time. But for years, we've talked about trying to sit down with the Board of Ed to come up with a better system, but it's never happened.
Amy, do you do any rentals of Birdseye, or is that just not even available because of the use of it?
No, I use Birdseye every second I can because I don't have to charge for that because there's already custodians here on staff. So Birdseye on any given day between after school and all of our programs is pretty much full every day. I do have to pay for someone to be here on the weekends, but we sometimes have to absorb that cost.
But that's all for town programming, not private programming, right?
No, we very rarely have any space left to give out to private programming, and any of the folks, any private programs that come to town, I tend to put them in gyms where custodians have to be hired and then pass that cost on to them. I try to keep, Sterling House, myself, Al, all in the gyms that have custodians already so we can cut back on costs.
That's what I figured. No, my dream is that, and I'm sure Catherine shares this, is for Sterling House to have a gym on their property.
That would be great.
So, because we're getting towards the end of the meeting, and maybe we could use this time to let you know what we've heard from the public. The you know, most people overwhelmingly said Booth Memorial Park is a Stratford gem, and that's something identified as Stratford's strength. And there was a need for more such places in the town, and I don't know, the town is fully developed and built out, if there is any more that you can do with the parks. But again, there was some concern about the quality of parks, like how the maintenance has been, and cleanup and all those issues that arise when people use it often. Have you heard any of those in your interactions with the general public? What solutions do you think we should recommend through the POCD that kind of generally touch upon public engagement, education, or anything like that?
Hi, Sue Smith. I could address that a little bit. With everybody has the bucket list wish of I wish my division had 400 people in it, because we take care of 400 acres of park and public building and town and school and all of these properties. So when I have my staff of 27, when you take out 6 guys for trees, and you take out foremen, and you take out beachcombing, and you take out all of these different factors, basically I have about 8 or 9 guys for 400 acres. So the per acre per person is extremely high. So when you look at my house as an acre, how come you can't take care of it? Well, you put an acre in a 26-mile radius town compared to an acre that you go to every day, it really changes the dynamics, and it exponentially changes on time factors. So, we do get the complaints like, why is the garbage this? Why is that? Why is that? First of all, people are terrible. They don't take care of their own, and we can't be everywhere at once. So if you're going to put in recommendations for POC, obviously staffing and labor is always a huge component of any space that you have, to lower that equation of part of acreage per person or responsibility of person. So that's just my factor.
I can't help
I
but think
hear you.
about last late spring and early summer. It was a nightmare for you guys keeping all the parks and fields cut because the grass was growing so fast. And when it comes to garbage, I can't help but be amazed at national parks and beaches I go to in North Carolina where there are no garbage cans. You're expected to take your garbage with you, and people do it. I just can't imagine us. I'd love to see it here, but I just can't imagine how we could ever do it. And then, Chad, how about the Big Belly? How would you say that has helped over the years?
The big bellies have helped tremendously, but the thing is, big bellies are supposed to take the place of cans. So where I have 15 or 20 cans, one big belly is the same as 5 cans. So when you start removing cans that are every 30, 50 feet of 50 feet apart, and start putting a big belly, and now they're 100 to 125 feet apart, people still don't find the garbage cans. So it's a great system, but it's just not used properly, and it's very hard to educate people. Residents who see it all the time, who are used to the system, is great. When you have visitors, or you don't have somebody who's used to the system, if we were to put them in parks where they have picnics, and they're conscientious enough to bring their own garbage bag, they'll fill the garbage bag, look at a big belly, and be like, well, what do I do? Well, I leave it right next to the big belly because it won't fit in the mailbox style opening. And now animals tear it apart, people tear it apart, whatever the case is, people are lazy to put it in the big belly, and now we have mess. So they have their bonuses, or they have their pros and their cons in the same, on that same page or wavelength.
Chad, do you
So,
have a
are
sense?
you open to the Friends of Parks idea? Like if somebody were to form a group that would help the Parks Department in the cleanup and maintenance?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, as long as it could be coordinated through a point person, that would be fantastic. I mean, we could come up with things that just the daily routine maintenance that we just don't have the staff to be everywhere at once that would really help to change the look and the quality and the overall appearance of everything by just doing little stuff.
Chad,
Yeah, and
with
I
that,
really like the idea about diversifying your board by to include high school students to take on more. And maybe that could be a recommendation to encourage more Friends of Parks in partnership with schools or something. I don't know. Mhm.
And I know there are more than a few people around town, residents, who clean up themselves in their neighborhoods. And I remember one family going down Cut Spring Road from Main Street to Whippoorwill, picking up all the litter. And I think I recommend them for a beautification award for their efforts.
yeah, I agree on the teens participating in the committee possibly. And I also, just a separate thought, I live on Park Street. The top of Park Street is one of those little roundabouts that neighbors had taken the initiative to change over from just a plain grass area to to a pollinator garden, and it'd be great to see more of that promoted along with the some of the neighborhood cleanups. Be great. Chad, do you know if there's ever been a comparison done of, with that 400 acres of space and the staff and budget that you have, a comparison against other local towns?
I did it when I first came on board about 10 years ago, and I'm friends with a lot of park superintendents throughout the area. Stratford is a different animal because we can't really be compared to, I think, all but 5 municipalities in the state. So most municipalities, the biggest factor of most municipalities is Board of Education take care of their own property, schools, and maintenance, where Stratford Public Works does. So, like when you look at even neighboring Milford, like Milford, the Parks Division is just responsible for town-owned parks and building surfaces or areas or properties, however you want to put it. So, their BOE and their schools and their fields and all of that stuff is maintained by the custodians. So that's why it's hard for us to compare to anybody because we're so unique that, 20 years ago when the Public Works Division was 185 people, 190, I've heard 200 people. Well, now we're 110. So over the years, it's definitely been trimmed out, and obviously the responsibilities have gone greater because of building maintenance, schools, addition of buildings, that kind of stuff. More fine turf, less, the list goes on and on and on. So it's very hard for us to compare.
Can I
I
ask
think
something?
we think we need an anti-litter program in the schools so the kids will go home and teach the parents. That's what happened with recycling. We had a recycling
Yep.
program back when it first started. And the kids became experts at it, and they went home and taught the parents.
That's great. In a lot of communities, we hear about, dog parks come up quite a bit. Is that something here in Stratford? I know that there's one in Roosevelt Forest. Is that a need at any other locations? Is there other dog parks, other places? Like,
No, I think the one is enough, and it took years to make that happen. Years and years. And it gets a lot of use from what I understand.
Yeah, I would love to see one in the south end. I feel like having it way up in the north end where I think it really limits who has access to it. But I understand how much went into trying to find a location and no one wants it in their backyard. So I think it's unfortunate that it's there, but that's what we have.
This is Bob Jekyll, and as one of the co-chairmen of that committee, to find a spot, I can tell you that there are plenty of suggestions for good locations in town, but the chances of it going there are pretty much none, since it was extremely difficult to get people agree to put it in the middle of the woods. Let alone there are, in my opinion, other places in town that it may be more centrally located or allow for greater access for more people to utilize the park, but where it is probably the only spot that's going to get the okay with everybody.
Well, that also brings to mind, for years there's talk about the need for a pool in the south end, but now it's more splash pad now that seems to be what people want. And we had a great location in the south end to put one, but neighborhood opposition made it not happen. So I think it's been suggested to put one at Short Beach. And Bob, you guys talk about that? Oh, you're on Short Beach, right?
We have talked about it, and we all agree that I think having one near the shoreline is a great idea, for the younger kids. And I think the logistics of it, it's come up a bunch of times. I'm sure Chad can agree. It's come up a ton when we talk about it. But the logistics of getting the water lines down there and just the particular spot at the beach that would work best for it to be placed. And the cost associated with it. But it's a great idea. I do think the beach is a perfect location, but there were some considerations that needed to be worked through.
Yeah, I look at the area along Longshore down at Westport and think how beautiful that would be to be at a Short Beach as well. But the logistics are no doubt quite a lot to overcome.
Yeah. The one in New Haven, Lighthouse Point, I saw it for the first time just a couple of years ago, and they have a great little splash right there near the shore, and you can see it probably gets a ton of use, and it's a great way to bring the whole family out, especially the little ones, in a safer way than having to watch them with the sound. So certainly a good idea if we could get it there.
So, Rory, do you want to go back to that slide on the goals in the plan? And if you can take a minute to review these goals and let us know if they're still true or if anything else should be added to this one, so that we can, finalize these for the current POCD update.
I think a lot of this is in our 5-year master plan. I think it might be a good idea that we review the last one and see what has happened. A lot of things that were on that 5-year master plan have happened. And then look at the other things that are remaining to be done and see how they tie in with this list of objectives.
That would be great,
That would
Bill.
be great.
Really helpful. Yeah.
I'll have to ask
Rory,
Aileen.
do you want to let them know what your timeline is?
Yeah, so we're looking to start kind of beginning writing by probably like mid-January. So if that's something that you guys could take a look at before then, that would be great to have that and certainly share that master plan with us. I don't know if it's something we can find online, but it sounds like we'll be able to get a copy of that. But yeah, I think you guys reviewing that and letting us know what has been accomplished and what should be added to that would be very, very helpful as we kind of start our writing process. Great. Well, if nobody has any other thoughts or comments, I mentioned we have our Plan Stratford website. If you guys haven't visited that yet, please, I encourage you to go on, take the online survey, and just continue to be involved. It would be great. Thanks for taking the time today to meet with us. It was really helpful. And yeah, Susmitha, anything else you want to add before we end today a little bit early?
That's all. Thank you very much for joining us. And this is a great start. And I think you should definitely send us your updated goals for the plan once you review the master plan and, let us know what is still relevant. Also, please, if someone can get us that copy, whether it's Bill or Amy, it'll be helpful to see what's in the plan and any maps or other illustrations that we should be preparing for that update.
Aileen is going to send that out. She's our secretary of Park and Rec and the Rec Department. So she's going to send that out to everybody.
Okay,
and another thing that would be awesome to have, if anybody has any great pictures, of people using the facilities. I think that's an area where we're kind of lacking in pictures is, people out playing pickleball and people playing basketball. We want to have a really nice visual document. So if anybody has some great photos they could share with us, we'll give you credit for them in the plan, of course. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again, everybody, and enjoy the rest of the week.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, thanks. This is a great almost hour of brainstorming, really.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye-bye.
Mhm.